Hello and welcome to ETCIO TV. I'm Sneha Jha, editor of ETCIO, and with me today is Shayan Mohanty, Chief Data and AI Officer for Thoughtworks. Hello, Shayan.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us on the sidelines of Thoughtworks Digital Leaders Forum.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Shayan, we've seen that AI has moved beyond the experimental labs and is now beginning to become a part of organizational fabric. But the reality is that it's hard to see AI projects move from pilot to production stage because 80% of AI projects fail. So, what, according to you, are some of the underestimated barriers to the success of AI projects?
I think there's a couple things. So, number one, the thing that we're observing is that most of these failures are at the level of change management. It has a lot less to do with the technology. So, for instance, like knowing what good looks like is often kind of hard to do. So, oftentimes organizations don't necessarily have KPIs or metrics that they're trying to hit specifically, especially in kind of like POC phases. It's a lot of like thousand flowers blooming type approaches as opposed to sort of like concentrated and surgical approaches to implementing AI for a purpose. So I think that's like point number one, change management, sort of like knowing what good looks like. Number two is actually a little bit more technologically oriented, which is related to the former point, but it revolves around evals. So interpretability, understanding how things are working under the hood, and being able to measure risk as associated as a side effect of that. So as you think about like where AI is being used today, oftentimes the most valuable use cases have the most risk associated with them. And so as a side effect of that, being able to measure that risk is super important, but actually at an academic level, even at a technology level, we lack the vocabulary to be able to do that effectively. So that's an area of like technological improvement that the world is moving towards, but it's still not here yet. So the combination of these two things kind of ends up in this like weird Gen AI holding pattern oftentimes.
Shine, as a technology, AI is evolving rapidly. So, what, according to you, will be the key trends driving enterprise AI and LLMs over the next 1 or 2 years?
In the next year or two, I think there's a giant movement towards um, co-creation with AI. That's sort of the punchline here. It's how do we build systems and ways of working that pair humans and AI effectively? And that's a non-trivial endeavor. It's this idea of how do you redesign teams and tooling? How do you redesign workflows that bring both humans and AI together as first-class citizens? So I think like what we're going to see over some period of time is an evolution of the organization, an evolution of the enterprise, where processes are not just going to be automated, but they're going to be reimagined with like AI at its heart. So examples like, for instance, what we do a lot of is software development. And so we're completely reimagining the software development lifecycle, where it's not just about code generation, but it's also about how teams work together, what the role of the AI is in a team, how we think about that being personified, whether you treat them as a teammate or as a part of the fabric of the team, like a tool or kind of a substrate. These are things that we're going to see evolve. So I think over the next like 1 to 2 years, a lot of that is going to crystallize. Ultimately culminating in this idea of like really impactful sort of like teaming of humans and AI.
Shine, I'm curious to know, what does the ThoughtWorks AI playbook look like to ensure that your client solutions not just scale but also help your customers adapt and thrive in the world of AI?
I think there's a couple things here. One is like we help our clients measure. That's the first step. Just like understand what's there, what good looks like, and how do we actually define risk in a system. So that's sort of like step one. Step two is designing a system that adheres to those properties. And again, like designing the workflows that team human and AI together, designing the things that sort of make that workflow kind of tick within an organization. And then the final thing is a constant monitoring and evaluation loop that allows us to continually improve that feature, that workflow, that organization as a whole. Treat it as an organism that's going to keep growing and changing over time, and have the right sensory apparatus around it to make sure that we can kind of keep capitalizing on it over time.
How do you architect AI solutions that are globally scalable and also locally compliant? What's your approach here?
This is a really interesting problem because, like, as I'm sure you know, we have a lot of clients that are very global in nature, and they have to sort of maintain um, their global.
Works in EU, US,
Exactly. There's so many
India.
different ways that people are looking at it, and also like different regions. Not only are looking at it differently, but are at different levels of maturity in terms of like their AI compliance overall. So, kind of like the approach that we take is number one, building a global runtime, if you will. So, generally speaking, compliance will have a lot of different factors. There's things like data level compliance, like audit level compliance. There are things around uh, how AI can transact with humans, what it can and can't do. And this has different levels of importance depending on the industry. So, typically, what we do is we have a global lens first. So, we need the ability to have governance over AI systems. We need the ability to measure. We need the ability to understand what and why they're doing things, right? Explainability, interpretability, controllability is a very big aspect of that as well. So now, with all of those things, let's say we have that runtime, we have the mechanisms in place to be able to do all of that. Then we can retrofit for each individual region specific, not just rule sets, but almost like lenses, right? And then we geographically sort of lock those or by industry or what have you. So we've done this now for quite a few clients where we have this sort of like overall runtime and then individual implementations depending on their locality or what vertical they're in. And that seems to work reasonably well. But I think as time goes on, we're going to see a lot of this compliance and a lot of these regulations kind of converge, is my sense. Like uh, the whole concept of AI safety is something that I think everyone generally agrees on, like the idea that we need safety mechanisms within AI and the use of AI. I think nuances change here and there, but the overall motions to achieve that, I think, are largely going to converge. So I think over time, we're going to need less and less like massive fan out of those different sort of like rule sets and governance, and hopefully we get more and more put at the global level.
Shayan, so how do you measure the impact of AI projects? Is it in terms of cost savings, speed to market, market outreach, and penetration of newer markets, or a combination of all of these?
It's usually some combination of those things. Like, truthfully, every AI project has some impact on all of those features. Um, Typically, the way we think about it is at a portfolio level. Very rarely is an organization only doing one AI project. Typically, there's a whole handful of them that are happening all at the same time. So you have to take a portfolio lens to it. And the way you think about it is some combination of revenue uplift, cost basis reduction, ultimately an increase in profitability is like one major aspect of it. Another major aspect is unlocking new markets. So, in general, there's sort of like two things that people seem to be focused on a lot, which is uh, additional revenue generation and then a reduction in their cost basis. So, at a portfolio level, if you kind of combine those two things, you should see a pretty significant increase in profitability. And you can track that again at a portfolio level. When you get down into an individual project, though, there will be a whole bunch of different KPIs, a whole bunch of different evals that will relate to that one particular project. Um, but that doesn't necessarily amount to organizational impact alone. You have to track it at a portfolio level.
Given the fast moving nature of AI, how do you make sure that your talent stays adaptable and is constantly learning new AI models and the new shifting innovation paradigms in AI?
Truthfully, I think we do this imperfectly, but I don't think anyone has quite cracked this. The way we do it is just by going back to culture and DNA. We have a culture of constantly learning, of constantly experimenting, of constantly trying things. This has been the case even before AI, right? Like, Thoughtworks was known for a really long time for engineering best practices. We made Agile popular as an example. So it's like we have always been of the mentality of trying things very quickly, iterating very quickly, and getting to an outcome very quickly, measuring along the way. So that DNA helps us here, but it's not the only thing. So We have an AI research team, as an example, where we publish like academic papers specifically around interpretability and control. We disseminate that information throughout the rest of the organization. We also have centers of excellence and cohorts, little teams within our company that are constantly trying new things and again, disseminating those learnings across the company. Getting that connective tissue is hard, especially for a 10,000 person organization. Um, but we're trying to do it better and better each day. And hopefully, like, as we do that more and more, and as we have different teams that are at the bleeding edge of not just trying things, but actually building and contributing to the bleeding edge, uh, frankly, that kind of circle, if you will, is kind of how we think about making sure people are always up to date.
Shayan, as the Chief Data and AI Officer at ThoughtWorks, you're uniquely positioned to answer this question. What, in your experience, are the emerging risks in AI? Is it societal, regulatory, or technical?
So let's take like a short term versus long term view, right? In the short term, there is societal risk. Okay, it would be insane of us not to acknowledge that. Um, as with any new technology, there is pipe fitting that needs to happen, and that's probably the nicest way to put it. But um, certain jobs are likely to get impacted in various ways. When I say impacted, it's very easy to say, okay, a bunch of people are going to lose their jobs. That may actually be part of it, but another part is that as a side effect of that, new markets will open up, new opportunities will be created. We're not going to know what those look like ahead of time. So, and it's also worth noting that this is not the first time that this has happened in, recent history, even let alone human history, right? Like we used to have an actual job called calculators, right? And then we actually have calculators in our pockets and now on our phones, right? And as a side effect of that, it unlocked entirely new industries. We were able to create an entire like engineering workforce that, is basically built on the premise that you have small computers just everywhere. Um, so the side effect of that is, yes, calculators ended up losing their jobs, but off the back of that, a whole bunch more people got employed in various other ways, and society progressed even faster than it did before. So I suspect we're going to go through something very similar here. Now, the primary difference is that in these cases, the technology was so almost like surgically focused. It was very kind of like specifically addressing a certain type of gap, a certain type of like problem space. So obviously, calculators themselves are general purpose, but we had literal roles of calculators in a variety of different industries. Here with AI, it's a little bit broader than that. Again, it is a general purpose tool, but it touches a whole bunch of different industries, a whole bunch of different roles,
Knowledge workers, I think.
knowledge workers, big time, right? Like, so the side effect is we're going to see a lot of change. And my hope is that off the back of that, we're going to see new roles, new industries, new capabilities emerge. So I think that's like one big part of it. The second part is kind of like from a technology lens. So, a deeper need to understand how and why complex systems work the way they do. And I'm not being overly prescriptive about like it needs to be transformer model related or AI related at all. But it's clear that as time goes on, the things that we use, the tools that we use are just getting more and more complicated. They're getting more complex to understand, easier and easier to use, but there's a trade-off, right? We've been talking about black box AI for years, right? Even before Transformers, but it's almost laughable now. Back then we called black box AI like neural nets that data scientists within an organization designed by hand, trained by hand, was running within their four walls all the time. And we still called those black box. But now we have AI models like
Invisible and
that
God.
are completely invisible to us that we didn't actually train or build ourselves, and are running somewhere else entirely. And
It's difficult to govern what you can't see.
precisely. So now it's going to require a new way to think about interpretability, a new way to think about how to reason about these complex systems. Uh, we're forced into it with AI, but I suspect that this is going to be the case across a whole bunch of new technology that will come off the back of this.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Shayan. It's been absolutely insightful and interesting talking to you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for your
much. It
time.
was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Shayan Mohanty, Chief Data and AI Officer at Thoughtworks, as much as I did. Thank you for watching.